during the pandemic, we launched a series of videos called Making Sense of It All. The idea being that we could use our faith to help us understand some of the unique and crazy and challenging, difficult things that were happening in our world. We were faced with a global event that all of us were united by, and, we needed to figure it out. I know for me, throughout all that time, my faith was a massive help in terms of finding something consistent and solid and grounded to help us understand all the difficult, changing and sometimes scary things that were happening around us. A couple of years later, as we approach Easter Triduum and we look at those three key moments in Jesus' life and, of course, the liturgical life of our church, there's still a huge need, I think, to use our faith to understand our world and to figure out what we are called to do within it. Our faith is a doing faith. You're not just called to sit and listen. We're called to listen and do. And as though the pandemic maybe seems to be kind of moving towards an end, please God, we now have war in Europe. We now have struggles and crises that are brand new. And yet through all of that, God never changes. And particularly in the Easter story, the things we're going to explore over the next 3 days, we can find a way to make sense of it all. Today is Maundy Thursday, the start of the Easter Triduum, and tonight we'll have the first part of a kind of 3-part liturgy. That's what the fancy word Triduum means. And it's a chance to understand those last key moments of Jesus' life, the moments where a lot of the stuff we do now came from. Tonight we celebrate the feast of the Lord's Supper, so we remember kind of where Mass was invented, where Jesus broke bread with his disciples, shared it, had the wine. A lot of the things we repeat every single Sunday, well, they started at this moment, and that's what we remember. And on Maundy Thursday as well, remember what Jesus did at that meal. And I think it's about what Jesus did and the things that he calls us to do that we need to use to make sense of what's happening in our world right now. In John's Gospel, you hear Jesus taking a towel, tying it around his waist, kneeling down and washing the feet of the disciples. And as he's doing that, people don't get what he's doing. Peter says, start off with, I don't want you to do it, and then he goes on to say, well then wash all of me because I need to be clean, because he doesn't actually understand what Jesus is trying to show them. Jesus is doing a job that was usually reserved for the lowest of the low, and he was showing that to be great, we need to serve. To show real love, we need to do those things that people need, not the things that we want. And in the scripture he says, I've shown you this example so you can go and do the same. Later on in the story, of course, we hear those amazing words, do this in memory of me. Not think about this, not look at this, not sing about this. Do this in memory of me. We're called to do things. So actually what Jesus is calling us to do, particularly on Maundy Thursday, is to serve. And to serve by making ourselves humble, by not worrying about our status, our power, our importance, our comfort zones, but to serve the most basic needs of people. One of the most incredible things that we have witnessed over the last few days, in sharp contrast to the terrible scenes we see coming out of Ukraine and the awful things that are happening, is the amazing love and compassion that's meeting that fear and violence. Families opening their homes to strangers, people donating food, people helping across the borders, people doing incredible acts of service. At no point worrying about themselves, but instead worrying about the needs of others. We are called, I think, this Maundy Thursday to think about what Jesus was actually teaching us at the Last Supper. When he talked about his body being broken and the sacrifice he was going to make, he was calling us to make sacrifices too. And, God willing, we won't be called to give our life in the way that Jesus was called to. But we are called to serve in the way that Jesus served. And we are called to do stuff for other people and to put them before ourselves. Now, back in the day, the disciples didn't get this either. And we still going to get confused. It's kind of why we have Lent, really, and this whole season where we kind of try and strip out all the things that we often do for ourselves and the treats we have, so that we can get back to what's really important, which is serving other people and making sacrifices for other people. So today, and if you do get a chance to go and celebrate this wonderful start of the Triduum at church, think about what Jesus is calling us to do. Because what we're called to do is to serve and to sacrifice. Because what that is, at its heart, is love. The Easter Triduum, the Passion story, is a story of love. Often we see it as a story of pain or of suffering, but it's rooted and grounded and founded in the love that Christ has for us, the love that we are now called to share. Tomorrow we're going to look at Good Friday, those moments of the Passion where Jesus dies on the cross, and then of course that Easter joy of the resurrection. But today, as we celebrate the Lord's Supper, and if you go to church you'll see the priest literally getting down and washing the feet of people in the congregation, think about who really needs your service. Think about what you can do to bring your faith to life, and in doing so we'll make sense of how we can approach any situation, any crisis, any tragedy, by meeting it with love, service and sacrifice.